Begin the current Daf Mesechtes Bava Metzia Daf Lamed. We begin on the top line of the Amud, where the Gemara continues to explain the halacha of our previous Mishnah, which the previous Mishnahs are discussing regarding different items that you find, what your obligations are. You can't just have it; you have to do something with it. Make sure it maintains its vitality, so that when you return it, it's going to be a viable object. So our previous Mishnah was discussing regarding finding svarim, finding kalim, and what's your obligations to do to during that time period when you're waiting for the guy to claim it. And our Gemara continues qualifying the halachas of our Mishnah. Throughout the entire world. So discussing today's daf, when you have a garment that you have to spread it out because you don't want it to get moldy, it has to be only for the purpose of the garment. You can't do it for your own honor. Look, what's the halacha, says the Gemara, what happens if you're doing it for both? You have in mind to stretch it out at the same time. You're doing it at a very convenient time. People are going to see, say, wow, beautiful, look at this rug that he has. The Gemara also discusses various utensils that the finder must use to prevent them from decay and how to do that. The Gemara also says, Motza Saka Kupa. Someone finds a sack or a box, anything that's not normal, it's not honorable for the person to be schlepping these boxes. Obviously, Yitla doesn't have to take. But the Gemara tells us, Hikisha Chayiba. But if he hit, let's say, the animal, he's obligated now to return it. Since you started, so now it's ready. You have a chiyuv. What happens? Says the Gemara. Let's say it's normal for him in the field when no one's watching. He's wearing his polo shirt, but he wouldn't do it in town. What's the halacha? Because on the one hand, if he sees it out in the field, he's got to start because there he would. But he's got to bring it to the guy's house, and he's still wearing his overalls, and there he wouldn't dress like that in town. So what's the halacha? And then the Gemara tells regarding the halacha of the Fnei Mishur Sadin, although the halacha maybe doesn't obligate you certain things, there is actually a halacha of the Fnei Mishur Sadin that you should go beyond the letter of the law. So begin the current Daf Lamed on the top line of the Amud, we said that Matzik Sus, if you find the garment, said the Mishnah, you shake it out once every 30 days to make sure that it doesn't get moldy. And our Gemara quotes from the Mishnah, Shaytchalit Sarka, but you spread out the garment only for its needs, Avoloy Lechvaydai. They take out the v'chulu, it's not l'v'chulu, it's on this sentence itself. But you can't do it for your own needs to air it out. Let's say for your own honor, that you can't do. Says the Gemara, the following question, what happens if it's both? What happens l'tzarchai? He's doing it for his own purposes, u'letzarcha, but it's also for the purpose of the garment. What's the halacha? As the Tais explains in the Mas l'tzarchai, so the Gemara's question is specifically by when you're spreading out, let's say, a garment, a jacket or something like that, or anything similar to that. Because you might leave it there stretched out, meaning spread out, more than what's necessary for it itself, because you appreciate people saying, wow, look at this jacket that he has, until it might get ruined. But let's say by a sefer that we spoke about in the prior Mishnah, that we have no shaila about, because that the Mishnah told us you read from it, even though it's for your own purposes, it's the same thing. We're not geyser anything because we already set a time. We said once every 30 days, once in 12 months. You can't learn that from anything. It's the first time learning from it. You can't read it and repeat it. So that's clear. And also by the copperware, let's say, a Brisa teaches later on that you can use even with hot stuff and silverware with cold. So that's even for your own purposes, because through that utility, it won't get ruined. But our question specifically is regarding a garment where there, if you're stretching it out, it doesn't say exactly how much. So that's the question. Can you do it also if it's for your own purposes and for the purpose of the garment? Says the Gemara, Tashma, let's bring a raya from the halacha of our Mishnah. The wording of our Mishnah said, Shaytcha letzarka. We just quoted 2 lines up. We said that you stretch it out for the garment's purposes. Now, the inference is, letzarka in, for its own purposes. Holetzarcha uletzarka alai. But if it's for his purpose and for the garment's purpose, that not. It's got to be only for the purpose of the garment. The problem is, says the Gemara, look at the next words. Next words on the Mishnah, avaloy lechvaydai, but not for his own honor. The inference is only if he's doing it for his own honor, not. But if he's doing it for the purpose of the garment and for himself, that would be okay. So the Gemara says, these are contradictory inferences. You cannot infer from the wording of the Mishnah what would be if it's both, because both halves of the sentence seem to indicate the opposite way. So the Gemara says, okay, Tashma, I'll try to bring a raya from the following brisa. The brisa says, Lo yishtachena, when you're stretching out the garment, you spread it out so that it airs out. You're not allowed to spread it out, lo gabe mita, not on a bed, but lo gabe magod, not on a peg, and you can't do that. Now, that's if it's letzarchai, if he's doing it for his own needs. But you could spread it out gabe mita on the bed, gabe magod on a clothesline, if it's letzarcha, if it's for the garment's need. Okay, that already we know from the halacha of a Mishnah. Now, continue. This is the main point of the brisa. If let's say he has guests over, he's not allowed to spread it out. Not on the bed, not on the clothesline. Bein letzarchai, whether it's for his own purposes, and bein letzarka, whether it's for the purposes of the garment. Now, the Gemara assumes that the reason is because he gets honored when the guests come and they see he has these beautiful garments, and even though he's doing it for the purposes of the garment, but it's going to be qualified like letzarcha u letzarchai, because guests are there and they're saying, wow, look at this is fancy clothing, and you see that it's usher. So that answers our question that even if it's letzarcha, but if it's also letzarchai, no, right. So that's actually the Gemara is going to actually mention that right now. The original question was, no, you might just ruin it. If you're doing it also for your purposes, you might leave it there longer, you might stretch it out more, like, because it's some selfish reasoning. That was the question. So now that says the Gemara, no, it's actually not a raya. Shani Hasim, thereby guess, is different. Why is it different over there? Because the mikla kalila, when you spread it out in front of guests, that's going to burn it. So it's not even letzarcha, it's actually going to be anti-letzarcha. Now, it says the Gemara, how does it burn it when there's guests? Two reasons. Either because the evil eye of the guests are going to take effect on the garment. They're going to be looking begrudgingly, see, look at this company, look at this Vago, whatever that the company has over there. Or imishim ganavi, or because the guests might steal it. So it's not letzarcha when the guests are there, but maybe if it was letzarcha or letzarcha, maybe it would be mutter. But yes, it's not letzarcha or letzarcha, it's anti-letzarcha, because it's going to be affecting the garment negatively. So we don't have a raya. So, okay, Tashma trying to bring another raya that this Mishnah is discussing by the Egla Rufa. Egla Rufa is what's called the decapitated calf. When you find someone that was just he was murdered, and he's on somewhere in the forest. He's between two cities. So we say that the closest city has to bring a calf, decapitate it, cut off its head, and it has to be, the pasuk says that it can't be that it carried any yoke, that it did any work with it. So the Mishnah says over there like this. The Brisa says, Ichnisa l'Ravka. What happens if the owner of the calf had one time brought it into the harness, which is they would attach 3 animals or 4 animals neck by neck, and they thresh together on the grain. So if, let's say, he brought this calf into the harness, b'dasha, and it threshed, which some add on the words ima, with its mother, because he wanted the calf to go nurse with its mother. So kshera. So that calf is kosher still to be the egla rufa, because he didn't intend for the calf to thresh. He wanted it just to nurse from its mother. That's why he brought it into the harness. But if bishvil shatinik v'tidosh, but let's say it had it go into the harness because it wanted both. Yeah, let the calf go nurse and also thresh, because its mother was threshing, and the daughter came there for the purposes of nursing. And he's like, you know what? Let it thresh also. Another animal stepping on will help thresh the grain. Oh, then says the Brisa, then Pesula. Then that calf is not valid to be the Egla Rufa anymore, because it was Uvidba. It did work. And the Egla Rufa has to be that it didn't do any work. Says the Gemara, whoa, wait a second. Bahacha, this case over here, Dilitzarchai, it's for his own purposes, meaning the threshing. Ulitzarcha, it was also for its purposes, meaning nursing, meaning for the valid reason. That's what it is. It's both. It's a psul and a kasher. Uktani, and what do we learn in the Brisa? Psul, it's invalid because it had the element of the anti, which is the threshing. So the same thing should be also over here. L'sarcha should be pasal. Says Gemara, no, Shani Hasan, there it's different. Namakratz exesa kasam. Pasal says in the Varim, Ashali ubedba. It says that the calf that never did any work with it, mikal makam, which is even if he did it l'tzarcha, which is that it was to nurse, but the ultimate point is it did work. It was in the harness and it was threshing. So the Gemara says, wait, if that's the case, then even if, let's say, when they only wanted it to go just to nurse, not for threshing purposes, but still it threshed and it did work, So why over there did you say it's going to be kosher if he wanted it just to nurse? Says Gemara, no. Halay damya, the case of the Reish of the Brisa is not comparable. Ella lahodit nan. It's only similar to what we learned in the Mishnah Masechtas Parah. Now, this Mishnah we're quoting now is by a parallel halacha, but it's not the same halacha as by paraduma. Paraduma is the red heifer that they burn the animal and they use its ashes with water to purify people that became tummy from a mess. Now, Egla Rufa and paraduma are different, but as we're going to mention in a moment, they are compared one to the other. Now, what do we learn in the Mishnah Masechtas Parah? By para, also is not allowed to work, and it can't carry a yoke. So it says over there, shachan ala oif, if a bird rests on the red heifer, sherit kosher, meaning it's not considered like it carried a yoke because the bird landed on it. Alala zachar, however, if let's say a male mounted, a bull mounted on the paraduma, on the red cow, it's a female para, it's a paraduma, is a red heifer, psula, it actually becomes invalidated. Why? Because the pasuk says Ashaloi olaleha oil, that no yoke went onto the cow. Now, Brisa teaches Masechta Saita Nav Mebam and Aleph. I would only know oil. How would I know anything that gets put onto the animal? So we learn out from the halacha of Egla Rufa. We have a Gezerah Shava. Now, this. What's Gezerah Shava? Comparing the two halachas, that just like by Egla Rufa has this anything, you can't do any work. What is it? Comparing the two halachas of Egla Rufa and Paraduma. How does it prove that you can't now? So just like by Egla Rufa, it says the pasuk says that it can't carry anything. It can't. That's considered carrying. Yeah. As that with the male is mounting onto the female. Now, when you have the Egla Rufa, it's not really that Rufa yet, this young calf, go into the harness and the threshes, where he's not pleased with the threshing, he doesn't want that, he just wanted it to nurse. That's similar to the case of when the bird is just resting on the para aduma, and therefore it's going to be kosher. Meaning, we're coming to answer a question. We asked, we says, wait a second, you tell me it's possible when it's litzarche ulitzarcha, because when they wanted it to thresh and to nurse, said, nah, it's not because of that. It's because the pasuk says, actually, ubid, just can't have work done with it. So then, who cares? Then the Reisha also, when you didn't intend for it to thresh, just to nurse, also be possible. No, that's similar to the case we're saying by the paraduma, where a bird rests on it, where you didn't want it at all, even though it did, so to speak, carry a yoke of a bird. That's not considered as a psul, and therefore, when you wanted it just to nurse, it's also going to be kosher. So the Gemara says, well, my timer. Well, what's the reason? Why is it any different there too when the bird just rests on it? So it says the Gemara Kidra Papa, because Rav Papa had said there's what's called kri and ksiv. There's how a word is written in the Torah, and it's how it's read in the Torah. Rav Papa says, look, iksiv ubad, if the words in the pasuk had said that no work shall be done with it, ukrinan ubad, and we would read it ubad, I would say that yes, it would be invalid even if it happened by itself and you didn't intend for it, it would still be possible. Now, biksib avad, vikrinan avad. Now, if it was written ayin veis dalad, and you would read it ayin veis dalad, meaning that you did work with it in an active way. I would have said ad avad ba'yu, until he does work with it. Hash dichsiv avad, but you know what? It's actually written ayin veis dalad, which is read avad, that he did it. But b'kardin and ubad, we read it as if there's a vav over there with a shuruk. We read that work was done with it. Oh, so it's somewhere in the middle. Being an ubad dumya de avad. You need that the work that's done with it has to be similar to when you do work with it. What does that mean? Ma avad, just like when you're doing work with something, denichale means that you're pleased with it, you want it, you're conscious of it because you're doing it. Af ubad denichale, also when work is done with it, it means that you want it. You're intending for the threshing, or you're intending for the male to mount it. Oh, so that's why when you wanted it to be tinik v'tidosh, you wanted it to nurse and to thresh, that's going to be possible because work was done with it. When you wanted it only to nurse and not to thresh, even though it did threshing, that's like the case of the bird resting on it, where you didn't intend for that, and that's not ubad dumya do abad. It's not work done with it that you wanted, and therefore that's going to be kosher. But there's no raya to l'tzarcha l'tzarchai. Here it's a very different halacha. It's a gzeres hakasiv, which Tais even discusses what was the Gemara's Havamina, but Al Kaponim, that's what the Gemara is saying, that we can't prove regarding, we didn't answer the question regarding spreading out the garment, if you also have in mind for your own personal purposes, if that would be allowed or not. Now, the Mishnah continued and said, Kli kesef, kli necheshes, regarding silverware and copperware, so mishnamash ben b'chulu, so then you use it litzarkan, like we said, use it for the purposes of the vessels, but not regularly, because then it's going to get worn out. B'chulu, etc., which we spoke about, golden vessels and glassware, not to touch it. So Taraban Lurinna Brisa elaborates and says other types of material that we didn't speak about in the Mishnah. Amoitzi kli eitz. Someone finds wooden vessels. So mishtamash ben, you have to use them at times, that they shouldn't rot. Clean the chayshes regarding copperware. So we spoke about it in the Mishnah, but the Brisa is more specific. Mishtamash ben b'chamen. You could use it even with hot liquids, hot stuff, and for sure cold stuff. But not on the fire itself directly. You shouldn't put the vessel on because that would wear out the copper vessel. Kli kesef, silverware. You could use only with cold, but not with hot. Because it's going to darken the silver. Magrefos, shovels, which were used to either shovel out the ovens or to separate the figs that were connected, or the kardumais and hatchets. Mishtamash ben barach. You could use it with soft things, not with hard things. Because it dents it. You use something very hard, it's going to dent that shovel. Klei zahav, the klei zachuches, regarding golden vessels and glassware, said the Mishnah, ligaben achiyav eliyahu. So that you're not going to touch until Yah Navi comes, because Rashi explained in the Mishnah that gold does not decay, and glass might break if you use it, so you just leave it there. Now, says the Brisa, just like we said regarding a lost object, which is what we're discussing, that's what they said by a deposit. So the one says, the deposit, what's it doing by him? In other words, why is he using it? Let the owner come and use it, that it shouldn't decay and rot, whatever. Why is he using it? Rav Sheshes says, when we said the same thing applies to a deposit, where the owners went overseas, so the owner can't do this thing. So you're watching it for him. You have the same obligations of airing it out and stretching it out and using it so that it doesn't decay and doesn't rot. And the Mishnah said, "Matzah sak akupa." If a respectable person, found a sack or a basket, anything that it's not fitting for him to carry, he's not obligated to take the item and return it to the one who lost it. Says says, where do you know this idea from, that you see someone with a big frock and a big biz doesn't have to pick up your Costco bag and say, oh, he's walking around with this Costco bag. Yeah, and saying anything that's not respectable for him to be carrying. He's carrying a big box. You don't see a Rosh Hashiva or a Rebbe walking around with their shtreimel and then carrying the thing. Some of them, where do we know this? Says in the Brisa, says in the pasuk, which interesting. The pasuk says the word vesalamta, that you're going to hide from it. Now, the whole pasuk actually says you shouldn't see the ox of your brother or his sheep that are rejected, and vesalamtum hem, and you're going to hide from them. It's saying that you shouldn't do that. Hashar tashiv lachichi, you shall surely return it to your brother. But the word vesalamta itself, if you read it independently, it reads, you will hide from it. It's coming to teach you that sometimes you're permitted to actually hide from returning the object. Pam shat b'salam, says the Gemara. Sometimes you will hide, but at times you're not allowed to hide, because there's actually a third pasuk that says lisuch l'sam, you're not allowed to hide. So how so? So, and that's the price. It depends. A regular person obviously cannot turn a blind eye; he's got to return it. But if let's say he was a kohen, and the lost object was bebeis hakvaros, in the cemetery, which is forbidden, he's allowed to turn away from returning it. Or case number 2, Shayazakan. He's an older person. It's not according to his dignity to return the lost object. Or case number 3, his work costed more than the value of the lost item. Where if he's not going to work, because he's going to have to go return this object, get in his car, spend a half hour to return this guy's tchotchke, he's going to lose out for his job more than the lost object. That's what it says, and you will hide from it, to tell you that, yeah, at times you can make like you don't see it, and you don't have to return it. Says the Gemara, okay, you told me 3 cases. Lamai itzrach kra. For which one of these 3 cases is the pasuk v'samtem necessary to teach this halacha? As the Gemara explains, if you think it's teaching me the case of when it's a kohen who sees the object in the cemetery, that's what it would be teaching. That can't be pshita. That's obvious. Hi asay. To return it is a mitzvah asay in the term hashiv tashim. You shall surely return. Now Rashi points out, says, wait, it says not just nasay. There's a lois asay also of loisuch l'salim. Says Rashi, yeah, but it's not relevant for what we're trying to say. We're trying to say, does it override the prohibition of a kohen going to a cemetery? A loisa say, a negative prohibition is not effective to override another loisa say. Only a positive commandment overrides a loisa say, like the Gemara says in Yevamos Daf Chavav Medal. So it's not relevant for our discussion. So that's what we're saying. Hi, I say, the commandment to return the lost object is a positive commandment. The hi and the kohen in the cemetery is loisa say va'aseh, is a negative prohibition and a positive commandment. It says l'nefesh lo yitama and kedoshim yiu. So v'lo say again, even though it has a loisa with it, it's not relevant to override another loisa say. A positive commandment cannot come and v'dochi is loisa v'aseh. Although we say aseh derech loisa say, a positive commandment will override a negative prohibition, but will not override positive and a negative. So that's obvious that the kohen would not go into the cemetery to return the lost object. Moreover, we don't push away a negative prohibition of, let's say, kohen becoming tummy because of a monetary purpose of someone else's money. So that's obvious. That's not the case that we need the salam to for. Ella, what are you going to say? The case of when his loss of returning the object is going to be more than the value of the lost object itself, and that's when you could hide from it. Says I don't need Vesalam to them to teach that. That Rabbi Yehuda Merab Nafka, I know from Yehuda Merab. Rabbi Yehuda Merab, he quotes a pasuk in Devarim. It says, Ephes, that surely key, as you continue to Medbeis, Lo yeh b'cha evyon, that there won't be amongst you a destitute person. Now the simple understanding of the pasuk is because Hashem will surely bless you in the land Hashem, your God gives you to inherit. But the way the Gemara is darshaning it is that Lo yeh b'cha evyon, you should make sure that you do not become destitute. What does that mean? Shalcha koidim l'shal kol adam. Your monetary loss comes before anyone else's monetary loss because you have an obligation that lo yeh b'cha evyon, you should not become destitute. Which the drush is, make sure you don't become poor. So obviously, if returning the lost object is gonna cost you personally, you had a job to do, and you're gonna lose out now $1,000 and to return this guy's ball, which would cost $5, you can lose that money. That obviously says Rabbi Yehuda Merab, I know that you shouldn't do it. So I don't need v'salam to him to teach you. I know it from the pasuk of li b'cha evyon. So Ella rather says the Gemara must be that it's teaching me the third one. The zakah ve'en v'chavayda. You have an elder yid, older person. It's not according to his dignity to go be carrying this little baby shark toy, in the street walking around. They might think he lost it a little bit. So there's not makabadik for him. So he could hide from making make believe he didn't see that little that pool baby shark toy to go and return. Says the Gemara. Okay, that's what I'm learning out from Masalam to man. But Amar Rabbi, he does point out something interesting. He says if hikisham, let's say it was someone's baby cat, it's also not honorable for him to return holding that cat in the street. But this guy who was not lafi chavaydai, if he made like a push on it, one little hit to return it, like that it should go towards the street maybe where he knew the little kid lives on, chayiv, now he's already obligated to return it because he started. Once you started, the Chiyav Vashava took effect, and now at this point already, he has to return it. Now the Gemara brings a story related to this. Abaye Yosef came to the Rabbah. Abaye was sitting in front of Rabbah. Chazal lahanach izi the kaimu. He saw that there was these goats that were standing over there. So Shakal Kala, he took a clump of earth, Shadabu, and he threw it at them like, in other words, they should go back to where their owner is. Amalei, so Rabbi said to him, Ichayavtabahu, you became obligated, get up and return it, because the moment you did one action to return it, your Chiva Shava already took effect, and therefore he has to return it all the way. Now,
relating to this, we're going to ask an interesting question. They asked the following question. What happens if What happens if it's normal for this guy to return stuff in the fields when there's not that many people see him over there? He's not so embarrassed. So even though he's wearing his overalls, whatever it is, he would do certain things out in the field where there are not that many people there. But it's not the norm for him to return things into town because he's embarrassed from his neighbors. You see, there's an old thing already. And he wouldn't, in town, he wouldn't be walking around holding such a thing. But he found it in the field. Now, what's the halacha? Is he obligated to return this object? So what's the question? The Gemara explains. On the one hand, do we say, Hashamal Yabinan, we need a bona fide return. Since it's not normal for him to return it in town, so he can't obligate him to start returning it in the field because he's not going to be able to finish the job because it's not normal for him to return it in town. So he wouldn't be obligated. Maybe no. Look, it's in the field right now. In the field, it's normal for you, and you're obligated. So once you're obligated in the field to move it from wherever it is in its place in the field, now similar to Rabba's halacha. Now you have to return it in the town because the moment you start, you have to finish it. It's not clear what the halacha would be in such a case. Do we say because you can't finish, you're not obligated in the beginning, or do we say no? Yes, since you have to start, you have to finish it. Now, a qualification in general regarding these halachas, Amar Rava says, Kol shebeshaloi machzer, anything that if it was your own item, you would carry it. B'shal chaveri name machzer. Then when it comes to your friends, you also have to return it. No double standard over here. Not like if it's your own thing, you would carry it. But Emma says, nah, it's not bakovidik for me. There's no whatever. It has to be the same standard. And same thing, b'chol b'shaloi peirik v'toyin. If it was your own, you would go ahead and unload the load from the donkey, or you would load up to the donkey. If your own wife, you had the station wagon, you would go ahead and be schlepping these boxes to put into your thing. So don't, when you pass by, say, it's not bakabadik for me, whatever, to go and start schlepping boxes. You would do it on your own. So it says Azav Tazav, it says Hakim Takim, you would have to unload his donkey, you would have to load him up also, again, if you would do it for your own thing. Now the Gemara brings a story. He was traveling on the road. He encountered a certain person. So he had that his animal was carrying a load of wood. So he put it down, and he stopped there for a rest. Now, Amalei, when Rabbi Shloimy was passing by, he said, Dalili. Okay, he took it off from his animal, just for a break. He said, help me put it back on to my animal. So Rabbi Shloimy said to him, Kamashavan. Well, how much is your wood already worth? Amalei says, Palga, a half of a zuz. So he wasn't interested in schlepping and putting the wood onto his animal. Yoli Palga the zuz, he says, look, I'll pay you for the value of it. He gave him a half of a zuz, and he made it hefker. Tosfos says why he made it hefker was because he didn't want anyone to stumble, because if he's not mafker, even though he already paid the guy and the guy already got his money with, and it would be his. And if he's going to leave the wood there, someone's going to come and be open like sigzil. So if he was mafker, Tosfos is bothered. How could he be mafker? Don't you need 3 people? He says no, it's the rice, the rabban, whatever. Akapanim. That's why he made a hefker. Now, what did this guy do? This guy went. And, okay, now it's hefker the wood. He took possession of it back again to get it. So now the guy again had wood that he needed to put onto his animal. So how do you avle pagad zuzah? So again, Rabbi Shloimy basically gave him because now the guy owns the wood. Again, he paid him for the wood. He made a hefker. He saw again the guy's going towards the wood to make a hagbah, to be kind of it again. This is not a spiel that he was happy with. So Amalei said, he says, I'm making this hefker onless for everyone, but it's not hefker for you. And he didn't want to do this again. We're doing this routine too many times. Says the Gemara, wait a second, how does that even work? When we have a hefker kagavna, could you do a hefker in such a case that you're leaving someone out of it? But it's not. But there's a Mishnah Masechtas Pei that says, they say, hefker la'aniyim, that if someone only made something ownerless only for the poor, hefker, it's going to be considered as quote unquote hefker, meaning it'll be pater from meiser. Let's say when you have something that's ownerless, you don't have to take off tithes because it's ownerless. If you make it even just hefker for the poor, it already has that halachic status of hefker, and you're pater from meiser. That's what Beishamai says. But someone says no, ain't a hefker. It's not ownerless. Actually, hefker lanim vilashim. You have to make it ownerless for everyone, poor, the wealthy, kishmita, like just like by shmita in the seventh year, everything.
This is a prat. This is a name or sharing, but this is a prat. It's excluding one person.
Right. But that's the point. The point is saying that you can't make something hefker, can be ownerless if there's people that are excluded. You want to say should it be different one person versus a category, but it sounds like from the Gemara that they consider it as the same thing. It has to be universal, like shmita. It has to be something that there's no exception. It's everyone's allowed to take it. So we see that Beis Hillel says, who we rule like, that you can't pick and choose. Hefker is global. So how do you make excluding this one person? So Gemara says, you're right. That's actually not what happened. The truth is, he really made it ownerless for everybody. He was just telling him words, meaning he didn't realize. He was just telling him, like, it's not hefker for you. So whether he knew, he didn't know, he's getting a message across, whatever it is, but of course it was hefker for everyone. But the Gemara has a different question. Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg, he was an older person, and he was a dignified person. It wasn't according to his honor to be schlepping wood onto the guy's animal. So he's not even chayiv at all. So what's he going and being mafkir to get himself out of the thing? He's not obligated. Says Gemara, he was doing what's called beyond the letter of the law, which is actually a halacha. The Tani Rav Yosef taught a brisa. Pasuk says in Shemais that the Torah says that you should warn the Jewish people the statutes and the Torahs, and you should let them know the path that they should go in and the action that they should do. So each one of these words are what Yisro told Moshe Rabbeinu is a different idea. When it says in the pasuk by Da'at Lehem that you should let them know, Zeh Beis Chayehim. This refers to the house of their livelihood, meaning you should teach them a profession to make a parnasa for. And the reason why it's referring to an actual parnasa, says Rashi, is because chukos and Torahs were already mentioned in the beginning of the pasuk. So what's Beis Chayehim then? So it must be that, what's Vaidat Lahem? Lahem must be literally for their own personal purposes, which is parnasa. So therefore that's teaching them, you have to teach them a profession. Es haderech, you should teach them, you should let them know the path. What's the path? Zeu zukim chasadim. That's acts of kindness, which is the path that we know from Avram Avinu. That's what haderech refers to. What's yelchud that they should go in? The Bikur Chaylim, that refers to visiting the sick. That's you go to visit the sick, and that's referred to as haderech, as yelchud they should go. But in it, what's yelchud ba? They should go in it. Zukvura, that's burial, which you literally go in it. But that's a chesed shalames. That's what ba is referring to. And when it says vesamaisa, the action, meaning the appropriate action, zahadin, that's judgment. Asher yasun, that they should do, that's zulaf nimishur zadin. That is beyond the letter of the law. So therefore, that's why he was being he was buying it from him and being mafkir, because although meikra din he wasn't chayiv, but lefnimishur sadin he was obligated to go and help the person anyway. Now the Gemara just clarifies something about this brisa. Amar, the time that the brisa said yelchu zebikah chelim. So you're taking the word yelchu. They should go and say it refers to visiting the sick. Says the Gemara, but you already told me esaderech. The path is acts of kindness. Isn't Bikkur Chaylim under the umbrella of Gimel Chasadim? Says the Gemara, you're right, but ben Gila, meaning this of a specific mention of Bikkur Chaylim is when someone is born under the same mazel as the person that he's visiting. Because Amamah, the master says, Ben Gilo is someone that shares the same mazel under the same zodiac. When he visits the sick person, he takes 1/60th of the guy's illness. And that's what we're saying, even someone he has an obligation to go visit him. That's the chiddush in the Bikkur Chaylim pod. Regular visiting, of course, that's Gimas Chasadim. But there's more than just Gimas Chasadim. This is actually taking some of his illness. That's learned out from the word Yelchu. When it says Ba in it, Zukvur, that refers to burying someone. It says, Misaskim. These are all also acts of kindness. So why do you need a special limit for Kavura? It says, that was necessary only for an older person. It's not according to his dignity, which let's say by Shabbos Aveda, let's say he's not obligated. But when it comes to burying a dead person, that's a special learning of Ba telling you that even so, he should bury the person. And it says Asher Yasun, it says that they should do. He said Zulef Nimishur Sedin. That's not just Hamaisa, which is din, but Asher Yasun that they should do. Another mention is to go even beyond that. What does that mean? So the Gemara says, because Amar B'Yechon, and he says, Lechav Yerushalayim, Yerushalayim was not destroyed, Ela Al Shadana Badin Torah, only because they judged based on the laws of the Torah. So the Gemara says, what does that mean? Eladine Dimegiz to Ladainu? What, they should judge with the judges that afflict and they do by force, like what doing by the laws of the Torah was bad, and that's why Yerushalayim was destroyed? So Elam rather say no, because Shemidu Didain Al Din Torah, because everyone was standing on principle on saying, well, this is what it says in the Torah. Because with Abdul Film is sure they didn't go beyond the letter of the law. That's why Yerushalayim was destroyed, where don't say, these are my rights. This is, I'm allowed to. The person has obligation to go beyond the letter of the law. Now, I says, Taisis, we know famous Gemara Yomid of Test, that the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed because of sinless chinam, because of baseless hatred. How can you say it's because of they didn't go for the Mishnah Sidin? Says Taisis, the Havahal Garma. That there's different ways of translating what Taisis means, but they both cause, either one caused the other or whatever, but it both caused the Churban of Yerushalayim. You can now look at the next Mishnah, where the Mishnah qualifies Izohi Aveda. What is a lost object? Which Gemara is going to explain what does that mean. As Taisis mentioned, the bottom of Taisis, he says, when we're saying what is a lost object, that the person could understand that the owners don't know that it's there. Meaning, how do you know something even lost? You come into a shul and you see a guy's jacket, is it lost? Like, what does that mean? Like, am I supposed to go take it and return it? Like, what is Naveda? Of course, we spoke about Avedas up until now. But what qualifies something being lost to know that you should go return it? So it says the Mishnah, let's say you see a donkey or a cow grazing on the road. In Aveda, that's not lost. You're not obligated to return it because the owner has it there deliberately. But let's say let's say you find a donkey with its vessel turned upside down, or or you find a cow running between the vineyards where it's going to get injured. That's lost, and you have to return it. Now, what happens if let's say you return the animal and it ran away? You return it, it ran away again. Even 4 or 5 times, you still have to return it. Hashem says, return, you shall surely return it. You always have to continue returning it. Now, what happens if misela? What happens if the guy who's returning it, because he's returning it, he wasn't able to do an errand and he lost out a sela? Lo yemela, he's not to tell the guy that he's returning it to, okay, tell me sela. Give me the amount that I lost from my job I was supposed to do. Rather gives him his wages like a worker, where this guy says to him, look, had you done your work, you would have had to do a lot of effort. Now, according to what you did put in effort, that's what you take. Which Gemara is going to explain, what does it mean, kapayel, that he pays him like a worker? What type of worker is he paying him for what he did to return his lost object? Now, however, says the Mishnah, if there is a court over there, meaning as Rashi explains, if this guy who's returning the lost object, he would prefer to work more. I would work more to make more money. I don't want to stop my work. What should he do? If there's 3 people over there, he stipulates in front of them and he says, look, this is how much money I can make right now doing this errand I'm about to do. I don't want to stop to take less money. I'll return it if you tell me that I'll be able to get the full amount that I would have gotten had I done my job. So that's what he do, and that's what he'll get. Now, if there's no court over there, so in front of whom should he stipulate? You're right. Rather, his comes first, and he doesn't have to return it to that person. Now, the Gemara asks regarding this upside down donkey, which we said then you have to return, it's considered lost. So the Gemara says, about all the previous Mishnayos that we spoke about, Lava Veda, weren't they talking about lost objects? What is our Mishnah teaching us that we didn't know up until now? So maybe Yehuda says, no, what the Mishnah is teaching is Ezi Klal Aveda. What's a general rule in general regarding unspecific lost object? Shuchayba. That would be obvious that it's there without the owner's awareness that you'd be obligated to return it. That's what the Mishnah is saying. If you find a donkey or a cow grazing on the road, it's not lost. You're not obligated. But if you find a donkey with turned upside down, with its vessels, or par of rotza ben akram, or a cow running between the vineyards, that's considered lost, and you're obligated. It says, what? You think if you even find it there grazing on the road forever, it's going to be like intentional? What, the owner never brings it home? What, because it's on the road, so that's not an aveda? You're there for like 3 months and this cow is still like grazing. It's not lost? So maybe the rabbi says, no, you're right, up until 3 days. If it's more than 3 days, then it's lost. Says Gemara, well, hey, what's the case, Toma? If it's at nighttime, then even 1 moment should be considered lost. No one keeps their animals out at night. If it's daytime, then even more than 3 days should not be considered lost because, he lets them out during the daytime every day. So it's necessary. The guy who's seeing this animal, he gets up early before Allah Sashach, and he sees the animal there. And he's also coming back late at night from learning. He sees it there when it's dark. This doesn't see it 3 a.m. in the morning. He doesn't see it middle of the night, but he sees it very early, he sees it very, very late. So Tlosa Yemi for 3 days, we say, it could be that the owner let it out very early and kept it out very late. It's fey. More than that, there must be a lost object because it's not going to happen all the time that it's out so early late at night. Right. Middle of the night, even 1 moment is lost. I'm saying very early, very late, that would be up to 3 days. In the Brisa, matzah talis for cardinal. If someone finds a talis, a garment, or a hatchet, as you continue to talk about bisaratia, in the public road, or finds a cow running amongst the vineyards, that's considered lost. But if, let's say, talis b'tzad geder, you find someone's jacket on the side of a wall, or cardinal b'tzad geder, or a hatchet on the side of a wall, or paroi ben akram, or a cow grazing amongst the vineyards, not running, it's not lost. The guy, everyone puts the jacket there on the side when he's working or whatever. That's not lost. But if it was 3 days after another, well, that would seem to indicate, okay, why is it here so long? That would show that it's probably lost. One more halacha, if you see water coming to flood your friend's field, it is a good name. You have to make a fence in front of it, which would also be a hashavas aveda, that it doesn't get ruined. It's not only reactive, it's also proactive. Thank you anytime.